Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Thursday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. So, this one is a pre-recorded one. We're not doing it, not doing it live today. We'll be back to going live tomorrow. But yes, if you've missed it, we're doing the streams live, or the podcast now live on twitch.tv/primetimepk. Want to figure out how to integrate Kick into that as well. But for now, twitch.tv/primetimepk. Coming up on the show, we got a quick Thursday night football preview. This is just kind of a catch-all episode anyway. Thursdays, for the most part, are going to be bonus days with the new schedule. So, but with it being a fight week on a couple of fronts, today is just kind of a catch-all for some stuff that has been missed and whatever. So, Thursday night football preview, we are going to have some UFC fight announcement discussion, some boxing, the card, or the schedule ahead, and we'll continue our NHL and NBA previews, looking at the most talented teams in the NHL and hold myself accountable for calls on last NBA season. So, that's what's coming up today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Let's get to the Thursday night preview. Week 2 in the NFL kicks off tonight as the Buffalo Bills head into Miami to take on the Dolphins on a short week. The Dolphins are 2.5-point favorites. The total has fluctuated greatly. It was up in the 50s. It is now back down to 48.5 after a run all the way down to 46.5. This is an interesting matchup, and this is one where I'm not going to, just in general, from a gambling perspective, I'm not touching Thursday night games until they seem a little bit more predictable is a weird way of putting it, because that's trying to do all of that. But just seem a little bit more in line with what we see normally. It just feels like Thursday night games can be outliers way too often. And so I just kind of want to see how that kind of plays out, especially with how sloppy we saw the first part of the season be. But from just a prediction standpoint, I don't know how Buffalo stops Miami. Buffalo had trouble stopping Arizona last week, and while I do think Arizona's offense is improved, I think Miami's is better. So I would be concerned about that if I were the Buffalo Bills. I just, with Milano out, I don't know. And I get like that there's guys who are banged up on Miami's offense as well, but I just feel like this is going to be a matchup that Buffalo has some real issues with, given the speed that Miami has out there. And so for the Dolphins, I have said coming into the year that I think the Dolphins are being undervalued. I've felt coming into the year that the Dolphins have more weapons than people are giving, or maybe not more weapons than people are giving them credit for, but they have a quarterback who can take advantage of them in ways that are better than people are saying. This is a chance, at least for 1 week, to prove who you are. And for me, it's a chance for them to back up what I've been saying. But for the Dolphins, so much of the talk going into this year was focused on how bad they were against playoff teams last season. Well, Buffalo was a playoff team last season. And so this is, I don't think this answers every question, but it's a chance to go out and make a statement for Tua Tagovailoa, for this offense, and for the defense as well, who are going to have to go up against Josh Allen. For Buffalo, when they have the football, I have concerns about what this offense looks like. It felt like they needed to go to Josh Allen fix everything mode against Arizona, which is a concern for me. So I am unsure as to what this Buffalo offense is going to look like long term, but right now it does not look very good. And for the Dolphins, again, the circumstances, it's a quick turn to Thursday night, but it's also probably better circumstance than what they had on Sunday morning when Tyreek Hill and Calais Campbell were arrested before the game. So I do think that the seas being a little bit more calm around Miami are going to lead to a bit of a better week for the Miami Dolphins here this week. So that's the Thursday night preview. We're not clicking on anything, but if I had to pick one, which we'll get into on Friday, I would say Dolphins -2.5. All right, let's shift gears now and look at the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's UFC 306 going down from the Sphere in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so this, I feel like, always a good time, UFC pay-per-view week, to look at some of the other things going around the sport right now. So let's get into it. One of the greats in the Ultimate Fighting Championship is, and the sport of MMA has called it a career. Yes, it's UFC 306 week, but pay-per-view times, I think it's a good time to just check around the sport and see what's going on. And the biggest news over the last little bit was Demetrius Johnson announcing his retirement from the sport of mixed martial arts, and truly goes down as one of the greatest of all time. Pound for pound, I have him as the number 7 fighter in the history of men's mixed martial arts. And I don't know, like it doesn't feel like he's a generation ago, but I don't know how much fight fans then, or fight fans now, appreciate how good this guy was. He was one of the most complete fighters we have ever seen. Like that, I think it was Ray Borg, where he gets the slam and the armbar. It's incredible. His hand speed, excellent. Like he was so much better than everyone else in his weight class. And if you take pound for pound as, if you just like, the opposite of shrunk. Why am I blanking on? But you boosted a couple guys up and you shrunk some other guys down, and all of a sudden those guys everyone's the same size. Demetrius Johnson is winning most fights. That's like, if that's your definition of pound for pound, is what would these all look like if everyone was the same size? Demetrius Johnson is beating most. Maybe not John Jones or George St. Pierre, but he's beating most. He was such an incredible talent. And I just feel like he never really got what he deserved in the UFC. And it's weird because the UFC would put him in some highlight spots, right? Like they would try to build up his popularity, putting him on Fox. And then he would main event some pay-per-views, but he would also be second from the top on a John Jones pay-per-view card or something like that. And I do feel like they gave him some opportunities to shine, but I also feel like there was enough against him from, maybe not necessarily, like, I don't think Dana shit-talked him that much, but Dana didn't really build up Demetrius Johnson in the way that he has built up guys like John Jones and all of those guys before. And so you can put him in these great spots, but then when you spend that week of them in that great spot being like, yeah, this guy really isn't that good, why are we... I don't know, like he's here, he's going to be a good fighter, but whatever. It doesn't get that connection with the audience. And it's weird. Like he seems like a very, very nice guy and has that outgoing personality and was such a dominant fighter. It's weird that it just didn't connect. And then he goes to ONE and they treat him like an absolute super duper duper star. But the legacy of Demetrius Johnson is one where you look at a guy who was just so much better than everyone in his weight class, and it never clicked with UFC fans, and it's weird. I don't know why, but it never really clicked with him. As far as other fight announcements go, there haven't been many out here in Alberta. There is obviously some excitement building for the UFC Fight Night card in Edmonton, and it now has a new main event this coming about 10 days ago, as Amir Albazi and Brandon Moreno are going to be on top of that card. So that means the Blanchfield Namajunas fight is going to be a 5-round co-main event as well. And so this is a really, really intriguing fight. Albazi is like knocking on the door for a championship opportunity, and he has put on a very good show over the last little while. 6 straight fights that he has won, has rocketed up the UFC rankings at 125 pounds. Now, a win here and he gets a title shot. No doubt in my mind, a win here, he gets an opportunity at the championship. And for Brandon Moreno, that's a belt he's held before. Now he has to try to work his way back up to it. And so far, it hasn't gone great. He's lost back-to-back fights, and now to good fighters in Royval and Pantoja. But this is a chance to kind of knock down someone who has worked their way ahead of him in the rankings and work his own self back up to another championship opportunity. So a very, very intriguing fight coming up in Edmonton in November. UFC 306 goes down this Saturday. We'll be breaking it all down with a full main card preview coming up on Friday. That is the story from the UFC, but UFC Noche not the only card going down this weekend. Let's go to the world of boxing. It's a Canelo fight week, so again, a good time to see what all is going on in the sport of boxing and what we have to look forward to as we head into the fall and then the winter. All right, it is a Canelo Alvarez fight week as he takes on Berlanga this weekend on pay-per-view. And whenever there is a big major fight, I like to just take a look and see what are some of the other big things we have to get excited about in the boxing world. And we don't have to look far. On this undercard, this is another one. It's not the same as the Saudi-funded show in Los Angeles, but this is a pretty good undercard. Below Canelo, you have a couple really good fights. You have Erislandy Lara taking on Danny Garcia in a 12-round bout for Lara's WBA super middleweight title. Also, Caleb Plant taking on Trevor McCumbee, a 12-round bout for the vacant WBA interim super middleweight title. A couple at least names, right? Like, I don't know if Lara, if Garcia, if Plant are going to work their way into gigantic opportunities at any point, but still some very, like, their names, and they are good fighters. And I think, again, I am not overly enthused by giving Saudi Arabia too much credit, but the one thing that they have done with boxing is they have really solidified, like, look, you gotta load up some of these cards, because, like, the people are paying a lot of money for them. And we are now going to go out and set the bar for what an undercard is supposed to look like. So this is this isn't just a one fight show. Those are a couple of really, really interesting fights at the top of this card. Moving on, coming up next weekend on ESPN, it is Jaime Munguia back in the ring as he takes on Eric Bazanian. Sorry. This one, 12 rounds in a super middleweight. Munguia coming off of the loss against Canelo Alvarez, but again, that is an excellent spotlight for him. This fight will be on ESPN. He is one of my favorite fighters to watch. You know he is going to bring the action. Let's see what kind of rounding out of his game and what kind of maturing we have seen in his game coming out of a loss against Canelo Alvarez. The next day on DAZN pay-per-view, it will be Daniel Dubois against Anthony Joshua. Really fun fight. Really interesting bout. The winner of this, I would imagine, we're basically doing a heavyweight tournament here, where it'll be Usyk and Fury on one side, it'll be Dubois and Joshua on the other side. For Joshua, this is kind of the last run, right? This is, can he get up to that championship level one more time and get up to that top fighter in the world status one more time that we were looking at? And looking at him for a long time. It has fallen off, and I don't think anyone's going to give him pound for pound number one, even if he wins both of these next two fights that we are presuming for him. But this is a chance to get to that undisputed heavyweight glory that a lot of people saw for him at the beginning of his career, and what a rewriting of the legacy it would be if he was able to do that. Going up against Dubois, who is a terrifying human being, who can just go out there and just absolutely wreck guys, and has started to put together a very impressive resume. The thing I don't like about this fight is that it is for the vacant IBF heavyweight championship, which means the IBF has taken their belt away from Alexander Usyk, so he is no longer the undisputed heavyweight champion, which fucking sucks and is just so boxing. And so look, like, it's a heavyweight fight, and that's fun. And I get that in this era of boxing, it is tough to say, look, this is an eliminator for the undisputed heavyweight championship, because contracts are what they are. But you needed to get something figured out with this that wasn't, we'll just take the title off the guy who had one of the biggest wins in boxing in the last 15 years and strip him of the undisputed heavyweight crown. Because that's just stupid, and I hate it. So don't do that ever again. October 12th in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on ESPN+, it'll be Artur Beterbiev taking on Dmitry Bivol, 12 rounds for Beterbiev's WBC, WBO, and IBF light heavyweight titles, and Bivol's WBA light heavyweight title. This is the fight to make at light heavyweight. These two are just, this fight is going to be so much fun. These two are so talented, and I think you are going to get a really, really fun fight out of these two to solidify who is the best light heavyweight in the world. November 15th on Netflix, there is Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, but for our purposes, it is Katie Taylor against Amanda Serrano, 10 rounds for Taylor's undisputed junior welterweight championship. The one thing I will say about the Paul brothers is that they have done a pretty good job of putting a spotlight on women's boxing, specifically a Taylor and Serrano fight. So this is going to be on an undercard that has Mike Tyson at the top. So hopefully on Netflix, for fuck's sakes. So hopefully this gets you an opportunity here to really build these two one more time. And then the year rounds out Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on DAZN pay-per-view. It is Alexander Usyk against Tyson Fury, 12 rounds for Usyk's mainly undisputed heavyweight championship. It's the rematch we all wanted, and it's one that we get coming up in December. Plenty of time to break that down, but there's quite a few fights still to be very excited about. About one a month, a couple a month actually, when you look at September here, where we have the Canelo fight coming up here, and as we mentioned before, some good fights at the top of that card. You got Munguia next week, along with Dubois and Joshua next week. On the in October, Beterbiev against Bivol. On the 15th of November, Taylor and Serrano, and in December you have Usyk against Fury. So some pretty good fights to round out 2024 in the sport of boxing. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we will do a full breakdown of Canelo Alvarez against Berlanga as we get ready for that fight coming up this weekend. Let's now move to preview time as we get ready for the start of the NHL season. Situations are what they are sometimes, but one thing I like to do when we get ready for the season is just figure out who's got the best teams. So today, we look at the most talented teams in the National Hockey League. The 2024-2025 NHL season preview continues here on Couch Potato Diary. As we look ahead to this season, we've been doing a little bit of like, okay, what did we learn last year? But now we start to progress into the, okay, these teams are really good portion of the conversation. And so today, looking at the most talented teams in the league, maybe not necessarily like the most cohesive or built the best to win or anything like that. It is just when we stack them all up, who's got the most talent? And so I will say, for a little bit now, I have had the Toronto Maple Leafs on this list. And for the first time in a while, I don't. I just feel like this is a team that obviously their high end talent is very good, right? Marner, Nylander, Matthews, fantastic. I do consider Tavares someone as potentially taking a step back. I look at some of their depth issues, and I can't put this team there anymore. And I know this is supposed to be a list that isn't about like, oh, well, can they do it in the playoffs or whatever, and it's just supposed to be about talent. But I also think that we have a lot of teams that have built up their talent over the last little while, and so Toronto just having like a very top-heavy roster isn't enough anymore. So, coming in at number 5, it's the New York Rangers. They get on this list mainly because of the progression of Lafreniere. And if he can take or kind of stay at that level, and Kakko can take a bit of a step here, then all of a sudden you got something. You have one of the best goalies in the league, you have one of the best defensemen in the league, and you have one of the best players in the league. Pretty good. And to go along with those guys, there's Zibanejad, Kreider, like I said, Lafreniere, Trocheck on this team as well. And I think Schneider has a chance to take a jump forward for the Rangers this year, that there is just so much high-level talent on this team. And then I think they've built the depth out with some exciting young pieces as well. Really, really well. So the Rangers come in at number 5 for me. At 4, it's the Colorado Avalanche. Best defensive pair in the league in Makar and Taves. You have McKinnon, who is still a top 3 player in this league. You have Rantanen, who is probably like a top 15 or 20 player in the league. And you have the championship pedigree of a lot of pieces that they have been able to build around. Yes, they do seem a little bit more top heavy, and we just kind of flogged the Leafs for being that. But you have a core that has proven it, and you have a defensive group that can be one of the better in the league. And so I can't not have Colorado on this list. At 3, it's Vegas. They've lost a bit, right? This has not been a good offseason for the Vegas Golden Knights. With Chandler Stevenson going, Jonathan Marchessault going. Those are heart and soul types of players that have left. What you have left is Aiden Hill, who I think is pretty good. You still have a blue line that's absurd with Pietrangelo, Hannafin, and Shea Theodore. That 1-2-3 is stupid. Shea Theodore would be a number 1 on a lot of teams, and at least a number 2 on most. And the fact that he's a 3 behind Pietrangelo and Hannafin is just nuts. And then you have McNabb after that. And then up front, again, they've lost a bit of depth. There is no questioning that. But you still have Eichel, Stone. You have Hurdle now. You have just so much high-level offense. The depth, just as an organization, they've had trouble building it out because they trade all their draft picks away, and they're still kind of new, so that they haven't been able to really progress into that. depth area just yet, but I do think they have a few pieces that could kind of contribute. But when you look at the high level talent on this team, and god damn is it there, man. So the Vegas still makes this list at number 3. At 2, it's the Edmonton Oilers. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl were 1 and 2 on my best players in the NHL list. And so yes, again, got on Toronto for being top heavy, but when you have 1 and 2, you deal with it. Bouchard took a big step. Ekholm has been a steadying presence on that blue line. Darnell Nurse, I think, had a rough playoff, but is still one of the a very good defender, I will say. And then up front, obviously, we know who they have, but also you have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who is a year removed from a gigantic season. Zach Hyman, who scores 1 billion goals. You have added Arvidsson, who I think will add a little bit of that sandpaper that teams like. You have Skinner, who can help out with some scoring depth stuff. Like, it is a very, very talented team. And so they get to number 2. But in at number 1, they are the Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. When you look at a team that has Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk, the goaltending situation with Bobrovsky and eventually Spencer Knight, and then on the blue line, Forsling and Ekblad, who were amazing in the playoffs last year. Yes, they do lose Montour, but still, when you look at this roster top to bottom, this is a very, very good hockey team and a very talented hockey team. And that is why they are number 1 on my list for the most talented teams in the NHL going into this season. Doesn't mean they'll win the cup, although they did last year, but they are the number 1 most talented team on my list this year. All right, now it is time to... There you go. Basketball. The NBA preview continues. Yesterday, looked at how the Boston Celtics built their championship team. And for the audio-only folks, there was the podcast that came out very early today on the Boston Celtics trade tree with the Brooklyn Nets. So today, we are going to continue with the what did we learn from last year and look at the accountability. And so this one... I just kind of handpicked a few over-unders that I missed on, and we'll see what we learned from this. So the first, I got wrong. A few that I missed, few that I got right. One that I got wrong, the Boston Celtics. I had them under 55.5. I thought banking on the help of Kristaps Porzingis wasn't going to be good. I thought that Brown showed that he was overrated in the playoffs before, and then everything clicked, and this was the best team in the league all season long. No questions asked. So, oops. This is still a really good basketball team, and I haven't looked at what their total is yet, but that was a swing and a miss on my part. And so if we're looking at lessons, that was just kind of a misidentification of talent there, I would say. Another one that I missed were the Toronto Raptors. I went over 36.5 on them. I thought that there was actually a chance that they would be able to kind of keep some things together, and also you had Masai Ujiri, who had never really blown this team up before. So I thought the Raptors were going to actually make a bit of a push for it. And nope. Swing and a miss there. And then the last two that I missed, Memphis in the playoffs and the Clippers out. Memphis in the playoffs was based on, well, I mean, I'll come back at some point, right? And and then he's hurt and he's gone for the year. So now they are building up again here. So that one was just kind of an injury miss. And the Clippers, I was banking again on injuries. I thought that this team would be old and would be too banged up and not be able to make it in the playoffs. So, oops. Stuff that I got right. The New York Knicks at over 45.5. That one felt very, I mean, I felt like a lock. I got it by 5. Like, we didn't clear this one just outstandingly. We just kind of got it. Philadelphia under 49.5. Again, with no Embiid for a lot of the year. That did kind of help us out in that area. Orlando over 37.5. That was one that felt really good to hit on, where it just felt like early on, okay, this team has taken that step. Out west, Denver over 53.5, Oklahoma City over 44.5, New Orleans and Minnesota both over 44.5 as well. That was the murky middle in the West last year. There was a bunch of teams that everyone was excited about that had these young players, and they're, you know what? Some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be not. You guys try to figure out who it's going to be. And so they had a similar over-under, I believe, to Memphis as well. And then, whoops, on that one. But I think one of the lessons to learn from this one is that guessing along with injuries can be a little bit difficult to do, but also we are now coming into a time where, or at least last year was anyway, where there was a lot of young talent that we weren't really sure who's going to hit, who's not going to hit. And some of that really hit in big time ways when you look at Oklahoma City and you look at Minnesota. And so we have this great boom of talent that has come in over the last little bit. And I feel like in the past, the regular development of, okay, well, maybe it'll be good this year, and then another step here, and then another step here. The steps are being jumped through, right? Like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, there we go, is legitimately one of the best players in the league. Same thing with Anthony Edwards, and those guys proved it in this season. And the same thing goes for Zion Williamson, what he is able to do as a star on that team. And there's a lot that still needs to get figured out for sure. But this is one of the lessons that I learned this year, is that the regular development path for some of these superstars just isn't going to be regular. And so I think to San Antonio, where I think people are going to be maybe a little bit hesitant, like, they'll take a jump. So you know what? Maybe they'll take a really big jump this year. So that's kind of the lesson I learned from that. So a bit of an abbreviated one, although given the length of some of them before, this is actually extended. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, we'll be live tomorrow, twitch.tv/primetimepk, getting ready for UFC 306, UFC Noche, getting ready for Canelo Alvarez's fight on the weekend, getting ready for the week in the NFL, getting ready for the week in the CFL, and continuing at least the NHL preview on Friday's show. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. Make sure you review it if you are listening in podcast form. And I will talk to all of you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.